If you've ever thought about getting your ears pierced, don't do what she did. This is the urban legend about a girl in Japan who tried to do it, then ended up with horrifying consequences. So this young girl really wanted to get her ears pierced. After some pleading with her parents, they finally agreed and gave her some money to go do it. But instead, the girl kept the money and decided to pierce them herself and let her friend help her. They heated up a large needle and went for it one day. It was painful, but in the end, she was happy she could finally wear earrings. However, this wouldn't last long. One day in school, she felt an intense pain in her left ear. Her earlobe was itchy, and by the end of the day, she had a headache. She went into the bathroom and saw her ear was very inflamed. Then she looked closer and saw a piece of white string sticking out of her new piercing. She picked and pulled at it, which only made the string longer. Now it was hanging out of her earlobe. The string seemed to be endless. The more she pulled, the longer it got. Finally fed up, she took a pair of scissors and cut the string. Suddenly, everything went black. There was a burning pain in her ears and her eyes. She began to scream. In the hospital, it was revealed that it wasn't a piece of string at all. She had pulled out a piece of her optic nerve and cut it. She would be blind for the rest of her life.
This is why you should always breathe through your nose. In 2009, a Russian man named Artyom Sidorkin started experiencing intense chest pains to the point where he couldn't even stand up. He tried to ignore it, but when he started coughing up blood, he went to the emergency room. They gave him an x-ray, and it revealed a fist-sized tumor growing in his lung. Afterwards, the doctor told Mr. Sidorkin, unfortunately, it looks like cancer. But before they could start removing large chunks of his lung, the doctor needed to do a biopsy to see if it really was cancer. So a terrified Mr. Sidorkin came in a few days later. They performed the biopsy, and the surgeon, as he was looking at the tissue, noticed something. Tucked in the middle of the tissue was a 5-centimeter long fir tree. Mr. Sidorkin was a botanist, and he was a big mouth breather, and at some point while he was working, he managed to inhale a fir tree seed. The doctors told him he didn't have cancer, he had a tree. He was shocked, and he said, "I had no sense that a tree was growing in my lungs." But more than shocked, he was just happy to be cancer-free.
Have you ever met someone who wouldn't take no for an answer? That's what happened to Jillian, but things took a strange and unexpected turn. Jillian always went to this one cafe, and one day she bumped into a young man. His name was Charles. Charles came from a wealthy family and thought that no woman could ever say no to him. He asked Jillian to have coffee with him, and she did. They had a friendly conversation for a while, but by the time the cafe was about to close, Charles gently grabbed Jillian by the hand and asked her out. She said, "I'm sorry, you're just not my type," and left. This made Charles furious. From then on, he'd come to the same cafe every single day to hope that Jillian was there. It got to the point where Jillian would look through the window and see Charles waiting for her. She'd feel uncomfortable and leave. It just seemed like he wouldn't take no for an answer. But things were not so simple. One day, it was the final straw. Charles brought flowers to the cafe and waited for Jillian. When she didn't show up, Charles took the flowers, threw them on the ground, and stomped on them. He yelled, "That's it, I'm gonna make you my girlfriend if it's the last thing I do." The next day, he looked up Jillian's address in the phone book and went to her house. But he could never have expected what he would find there. Follow for part 2. If you're ever running late for something, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl who had a huge crush on a guy in her class. One day, he finally asked her out on a date and she was so excited, but things quickly took a terrifying turn. On the day of their date, the girl went to the mall, got some new clothes, and spent over an hour trying to get ready. By that time, she was seriously running late, but she had just taken a shower, and her hair wasn't dry yet, and she didn't have a hairdryer. This is when she made a horrible mistake. Because she was out of time, she had to find a way to dry her hair quickly. So she went into the kitchen, got a utensil, and went in front of her microwave. She jammed the microwave door open and stuck her head inside. She thought she would know if the setting was too high, and as soon as her hair was dry, she would take her head out. A few minutes later, the guy arrived to check on her, but no one answered the door. He knocked several times and still no answer. Then he walked to the back of her house and saw her lying on the kitchen floor. When the police came, it was already too late. There was a pile of gray mush leaking out from her head. This girl had boiled her own brains. If you're ever running late for something, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl who had a huge crush on a guy in her class. One day, he finally asked her out on a date and she was so excited, but things quickly took a terrifying turn. On the day of their date, the girl went to the mall, got some new clothes, and spent over an hour trying to get ready. By that time, she was seriously running late, but she had just taken a shower, and her hair wasn't dry yet, and she didn't have a hairdryer. This is when she made a horrible mistake. Because she was out of time, she had to find a way to dry her hair quickly. So she went into the kitchen, got a utensil, and went in front of her microwave. She jammed the microwave door open and stuck her head inside. She thought she would know if the setting was too high, and as soon as her hair was dry, she would take her head out. A few minutes later, the guy arrived to check on her, but no one answered the door. He knocked several times and still no answer. Then he walked to the back of her house and saw her lying on the kitchen floor. When the police came, it was already too late. There was a pile of gray mush leaking out from her head. This girl had boiled her own brains. This is why I don't tell anyone where I live. There was once a boy who asked his single father for a bedtime story, so the father told him. There was once a boy named Colby who made friends with another boy online called Helper23. On Colby's birthday, Helper23 wanted to give him a present in real life, so Colby gave him his home address, where he lives with his mom, his dad, and his little brother. But then Colby started to feel a bit weird about giving his address to a stranger online. The next night, he thought he had to tell his parents about it. He called out to his dad but got no reply, then found both his parents killed and a man wearing a dark hoodie holding a knife in the hallway. As Colby started to beg for his life, he hears his little brother crying in the next room. The intruder then strangles Colby and leaves the house with Colby's baby brother. The boy then looks up at his father and asks, "Why did the intruder take the baby?" To which his father just calmly smiled and said, "I've always wanted to be a father." If you like taking photos, don't do what he did. Once 4 boys drove to a tunnel to take photos at night, but this quickly took a horrifying turn. Once they arrived, they got out of the car and took a self-timer photo by the tunnel. But when they got back in the car, the boy sitting in the driver's seat didn't turn on the ignition. Instead, he asked, "You guys would never leave me, right?" The other boys were confused. "Of course not. Why would you ask that?" Then he said, "Look at my feet." The other boys started screaming. Coming through the floor of the car were 2 white hands with long fingernails, and it was grabbing the ankles of their friend in the driver's seat. The 3 boys opened the car doors and ran. After a while, they walked back up to the car to check on their friend. That's when they saw the headlights were still on, but the car was completely empty. The boy in the driver's seat was never seen again. If this happens to you, do not open the door. Once there was a girl named Donna who lived with her father, but he went out of town for a business trip, so Donna was left alone in the house. Then one night she heard the doorbell ring. She went downstairs and was about to open the door, assuming it was her father, but she stopped. Something wasn't right. She looked through the peephole and saw her father staring back at her. His eyes were wide open and he looked terrified, but the doorbell kept ringing. Donna said, "Dad, did you forget your keys?" No answer. "Dad, say something." Still no answer. Donna said, "I'm not opening the door until you say something." Eventually the ringing stopped and Donna fell asleep. The next morning she looked through the peephole again. Her father was still there as if he hadn't moved all night. She finally opened the door and what she saw horrified her. Her father's head was hanging from above the door, and there was a note attached to the doorbell with only 2 words, "Clever girl."
This is why you should always keep your phone charged. A girl named Marissa came home from school at around 3 p.m. She walked in the door and told her mom that some random number kept calling her all day. Her mom told her the person may have the wrong number and just to ignore it. Marissa said okay and begins to do her homework. A couple hours later, she receives a phone call from the same number. Marissa answers it this time and says, "Hello?" The man then says, "We finally found you. Don't worry, bunny." Marissa begins to panic and tells her mom what just happened. Her mom's face goes blank and says, "What did the man just call you?" Marissa says, "He called me bunny." Her mom yells and says, "Grab your stuff. We need to leave." Marissa, confused, packs her things and gets into the red car. Her mom begins driving fast and turns on the radio. The radio says, "The baby named Marissa who was kidnapped in the hospital 10 years ago has been found and police are searching for a red car." Marissa looks at the woman and says, "Who are you?" The woman looks back and says, "You can call me mommy."
This is why you should never take a prank too far. Once there were 2 young twins who lived in a small town and they were known for constantly misbehaving. One day a man had passed away peacefully in his home and the twins wanted to play a prank on everyone else living in the town, so they snuck into the house and started messing with the man's body. One twin moved his mouth like a puppet and the other one poked his eyes out with a stick. As they were doing this, they heard footsteps. They couldn't find anywhere to hide, so they placed the body back in the coffin, then got in the coffin themselves and closed the lid. But what they didn't know was they were taking the coffin straight to the funeral. The people carrying the coffin noted that it was much heavier than usual but brushed it off. No one even noticed that the twins were gone until the coffin was lowered. The twins' mother appeared at the cemetery about the missing twins, which stopped the funeral and began a search. Eventually, the man carrying the coffin confessed that the coffin had weighed more than it was supposed to, so they lifted it out and opened the lid. They did find the boys there, but they found them lying on top of the body, whose hands were wrapped tightly around each of their necks. The twins had been strangled to death.
This is a warning about a very creepy app that you should never download on your phone. A few years back, there was this rumor going around about the Talking Angela app that was released in 2012. Angela is a cat character who is sitting at an outdoor table at a Parisian cafe, and she interacts with users in several ways. She will repeat whatever you say into the microphone, and if you enable your camera, she will see your facial expressions and respond to them. And if you remove child mode, you could actually talk to her her in a text chat. The rumor was that children weren't just talking to a friendly cat, but instead real creepy people. Parents were complaining that their kids were being asked weird questions like what their full name was, where they lived, where they go to school, just things that a children's app wouldn't usually ask. So this warning was going around the internet telling people to delete this app from their phone. There were also creepy stories about people being stalked in real life by unknown people after using this app. Now, it did come out that it was all a hoax, but I mean, who really knows?
Okay, it's time for another creepy story time. My parents had me in their early 20s and ended up getting divorced when I was less than a year old. I often spent the night at my grandma's house on my mum's side since my mum didn't have much money at the time. I don't remember this happening, but my mother and grandmother tell me the story like it was yesterday. When I was really little, I would come out of my room and tell everyone that there was a lady that stood over my crib at night and watched me sleep. Since I was so little, everyone thought I was just making up stories and it was my imagination or I was just dreaming. This continued on for months, and one day my mum and grandma were looking through a photo book, and as they were just flipping through the pages, she lands on a photo of my dad's mum, my other grandma, and I pointed right to her and said, "That's the lady that stands over my crib at night." I had never met her, and she died years before I was born.
If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. One night, a boy and his friend were on their way to a school dance when they saw a girl on the side of the road looking lost. They stopped the car and asked if she needed a ride, and she asked them to take her home. They said that they were going to a school dance and asked if she wanted to come too. She agreed. But these boys wouldn't know yet that this girl was not an average hitchhiker. So they all got in the car and the girl sat in the back seat. After a while, the girl would constantly say that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. They got to the dance and things were pretty normal, but what happened after would make the boys question reality. When the night was almost over, it was finally time to take the girl home. When they almost arrived, the girl told them where she lived but told them to drop her off close by so she can walk the rest of the way. So that's what they did. But after the girl walked away, the boy who let her borrow his jacket realized that he never asked for his jacket back. His friend said that they could just come back tomorrow for it. The next morning, they came back expecting to get the jacket and leave, but things were not so simple. They came up to the girl's house and knocked on the door, but they were shocked at what they discovered as soon as the door opened. Follow for part 2. Can you imagine being locked inside your house for your whole life? Caroline's aunt and uncle said she was so ugly that she had to be hidden from the world. If anyone saw her, she'd be taken to the church and burned at the stake. But things are not as they seem. One day, Caroline started asking questions. She wanted to know why the other kids could play outside, but she could only sit and look out from her bedroom window. This made her aunt and uncle very angry. They said, "Can't you see yourself? Don't you understand the sacrifices we've had to make to keep you hidden from the world?" She had been convinced that staying trapped was for her own good, but one day she decided to escape. She used a safety pin to unlock the door and left. However, soon after she made it out, 2 men wearing uniforms started shouting at her. She began running. When she turned a corner, she saw a group of people who pointed at her and screamed, "Monster." Eventually, a priest came and said, "Take her to the church." They dragged Caroline to the church, put her on an altar, and set her on fire. As the fire grew, the priest turned to the crowd and said, "Look at this monster. Look at her hands, only 5 fingers. Look at her face, only 2 eyes, and her teeth a sickening white."
This is why you should always keep pictures of your parents. A little girl named Olivia who lived a very quiet life decided to check her homework assignments that were posted online. The teacher posted that they needed to write down their favorite memory with their family as well as bring a photograph. Olivia then writes about how her and her mom play dolls every night in the basement before bed and that she has a lot of fun doing so. She finishes her paragraph and then looks in her dad's drawer for a photograph of mom. She only found pictures of her mom from high school but decided to use it anyway. Olivia goes to bed and wakes up the next morning. Once she arrives at school, the teacher then says, "Let's start presenting our project." Then the teacher called Olivia's name to present. Olivia then begins to read about how her and her mom play dolls every night and then pulls out the photograph. As soon as Olivia pulled out the photograph, her teacher's face goes numb. She then asks Olivia if she can take a closer look at the photograph. She then recognized her mom as one of her previous students. Then the teacher asks, "Where did you get this photo?" Olivia says, "My dad keeps them in his drawer." The teacher, shocked, sits down Olivia and pulls out an old newspaper. The newspaper headline, "Local high school teen murdered, boyfriend gone missing." The teacher then looks at Olivia and says, "Your mom has been dead for 14 years.
If you ever want to own a pet, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Kylie who went to Mexico on a family vacation, but one day she got bored and wandered away from her hotel. That's when she saw a small black dog on the street. She could have never expected this would lead to something horrifying. Kylie walked up to the dog and picked it up. It started licking her face and immediately was very friendly. Since it didn't have a collar and no one was around it, she decided to adopt it. But this would be a horrible mistake. Soon her vacation ended, and Kylie put this little dog under her sweater to hide it on the way home. But as soon as they arrived, the dog started acting strange. It chewed a hole through the wall, and the next morning Kylie woke up to it gnawing on her ear. She thought it must be sick, so she took it to the vet, and that's when she finally found out the truth. Kylie said, "There's something wrong with my dog. I don't know what breed it is, but I adopted it in Mexico." The vet looked confused, then shook his head. "That's not a dog. It's actually a giant sewer rat, and it has rabies." If you ever want to own a pet, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Kylie who went to Mexico on a family vacation, but one day she got bored and wandered away from her hotel. That's when she saw a small black dog on the street. She could have never expected this would lead to something horrifying. Kylie walked up to the dog and picked it up. It started licking her face and immediately was very friendly. Since it didn't have a collar and no one was around it, she decided to adopt it. But this would be a horrible mistake. Soon her vacation ended, and Kylie put this little dog under her sweater to hide it on the way home. But as soon as they arrived, the dog started acting strange. It chewed a hole through the wall, and the next morning Kylie woke up to it gnawing on her ear. She thought it must be sick, so she took it to the vet, and that's when she finally found out the truth. Kylie said, "There's something wrong with my dog. I don't know what breed it is, but I adopted it in Mexico." The vet looked confused, then shook his head. "That's not a dog. It's actually a giant sewer rat, and it has rabies."
The Muffin Man was actually a serial killer. The Muffin Man is probably one of the most well-known nursery rhymes. But did you know it was based on a real story? A real dark story. In the 1800s, a man by the name of Frederick Thomas Linwood would wait in alleyways to kidnap and kill kids, luring them in with muffins. The song was later created to spread awareness amongst the kids and keep them safe, warning them about the Muffin Man, who was a danger on Drury Lane even though he was the first documented serial killer in the world. Everyone still teaches the song to their kids because not a lot of people know that the Muffin Man was.
Can you solve this mystery? This is the story of the missing girl from a small village in Japan. All the clues are hidden in what I'm about to say. Once there was a girl named Madoka-chan who went to the park with her mother for a play date with her friend. While she was playing with her friend, her mom started chatting with the other girl's mom. When she looked back, Madoka was gone. The other girl said she went to play on the slides by herself and she hasn't seen her since. Madoka was reported as a missing person. Her parents and the police searched for months with no progress. 6 months later, her parents decided to try one last thing. They called a psychic. They brought in some of Madoka's belongings, and when the psychic touched them, she went into a trance. She shut her eyes and said, "Your daughter is still alive. Her heart still beats and her lungs still breathe. Her eyes gaze at a luxury home. Her stomach contains only the finest cuisine." Her parents hugged each other, ecstatic. They knew their daughter was still out there somewhere. They asked, "Where is she now?" The psychic hesitated for a moment before her eyes opened and she said, "Madoka-chan is all over the world." What happened to the missing girl? Let's see if you can solve this mystery. Can you solve this mystery? This is the story of the missing girl from a small village in Japan. All the clues are hidden in what I'm about to say. Once there was a girl named Madoka-chan who went to the park with her mother for a play date with her friend. While she was playing with her friend, her mom started chatting with the other girl's mom. When she looked back, Madoka was gone. The other girl said she went to play on the slides by herself and she hasn't seen her since. Madoka was reported as a missing person. Her parents and the police searched for months with no progress. 6 months later, her parents decided to try one last thing. They called a psychic. They brought in some of Madoka's belongings, and when the psychic touched them, she went into a trance. She shut her eyes and said, "Your daughter is still alive. Her heart still beats and her lungs still breathe. Her eyes gaze at a luxury home. Her stomach contains only the finest cuisine." Her parents hugged each other, ecstatic. They knew their daughter was still out there somewhere. They asked, "Where is she now?" The psychic hesitated for a moment before her eyes opened and she said, "Madoka-chan is all over the world." What happened to the missing girl? Let's see if you can solve this mystery. Can you solve this mystery? This is about a boy who disappeared at a carnival. Even though he's presumed to be dead, no one could find out exactly how he died, but all the clues are hidden in what I'm about to say. One day the boy arrived at the carnival and came across a man who asked him if he wanted to play a game. The man told him if he won, he'd get $1,000. The rules are simple. There are 10 large metal boxes. Inside one of them is $1,000 prize money. If you can open the right one, then you get the money. But the boxes are too strong to be opened by your hands or even with a hammer. You have to use a blowtorch. The boy asked, "Is there a time limit?" The man said he could take as much time as he wanted, and he'll even help him out. If the boy gave him $5, he will put him right next to the prize money. The boy happily took out his wallet and handed the man $5. There was a mischievous grin on the man's face. The game started. The prize money was right in front of the boy. He could see it, he could touch it. But even though the boy won the game, he would never be able to spend the money, and he died shortly after he won the game. How did the boy die? Can you solve this mystery? If a website ever asks you these questions, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Masha who heard that there's a new service that gives everyone free internet access, so she decided to use it, but this would lead to something horrifying for Masha and her family. After she connected to this internet service, a web page popped up asking her to register some information, but the questions were oddly personal. It asked, "What's your usual mode of transportation?" with a photo of a bus, a boat, a train, and a plane. Masha took her bike to school every day, so she clicked on the train instead. But the next day, the local news showed that there was a horrific train crash that killed everyone everyone on board. Masha thought that this was a coincidence, but soon she'd realize that she made a deadly mistake. Later, she needed to use the internet again, so she logged back in. This time it asked, what kind of home do you live in? Along with 4 different pictures of different types of homes. She clicked apartment even though her and her family lived in a house. And the next day, the apartment building near her school burned down. The police suspected arson. Then she went back to the internet server one last time, but this time it showed a photo of her mother, father, sister, and herself with the question, who is your favorite family member?